Before the 20th century, places of higher education in England were few and far between, reserved for the most privileged levels of society. But with the coming of last century, and the idea that others besides aristocrats could aspire to a university education, the existing institutions were found to be insufficient, and new universities built of red brick began to appear. As the century moved into its second half, however, even these were not enough, and the 1960s, among their many memories, became known as the decade of the second great university building boom. Their buildings of concrete and plate glass looked as different from those of the first new universities as they in their turn had appeared different from the originals. Nevertheless, it's to the latest campuses that we look here, connecting them amazingly with a past so distant that we can only see shadowy glimpses of it. The origin of the ley alignments, straight lines of ancient sites over miles of countryside, could only be guessed at even by their discoverer, the late Alfred Watkins of Hereford. Yet the affinity for these most modern of creations, the 60s campuses, for them is striking. We do not believe any conscious knowledge existed in the minds of the planners. Rather, it's yet another case of that mysterious, elusive phenomenon known as subconscious sighting. In 1978, I attended an Open University summer school at the University of Bath for the course Fundamentals of Human Geography. The campus was clinging to the side of Bathampton Down with its ancient hill fort, and the main builders clustered round a courtyard known as the Parade. The slope of the hillside was so steep that one side of this had to be supported on concrete stilts. Further out in the campus there was a very interesting outdoor theatre with circular terraces and a very megalithic-looking stage stone. The road leading to the American Museum was directly following a ley, and many trees there had spiral tendencies, often noted on leys. Back along the avenue to the crossroads south of the university, a stone or outcrop was found, also in line with the ley. The walk back was particularly beautiful, with the lights of the university reflected in the lake as the sky darkened. Back in my room I continued map work till late, and an interesting pattern of leys began to emerge. There was a crossover pattern of skirting leys between Bathampton Fort and Salisbury to the north, a smaller one. Also 3 centres, an unmarked one near Claverton, one on the campus where there is a mound, age uncertain, and the crossroads where the outcrop stone is. 2 leys skirt the outdoor theatre. My 1-inch map, surveyed before the university was built, showed that the avenue predates the campus. There was also a ley-following stretch of track, no longer there. Another walk revealed an interesting alignment of mounds. One was almost like a miniature Glastonbury tour. I resolved to ask about it in the library. The following day I was able to get information on the Bathampton Hill Fort from the library. It's a univalate earthwork of 75 acres, having a later rectilineal field system across the ramparts on the north side. The third ley goes to Norton St Philip Church, Hinton Charterhouse Crossroads and Monkton Combe Church before skirting the theatre, going to the campus centre mound, then it skirts the hill fort and skirts Salisbury. Salisbury, the fort linked by the crossing leys, is also univalate, enclosing 20 acres. The name may derive from Sol, the pre-Roman sun god. I was told by the staff that the large campus mound had been built as a ski slope. The second ley is the avenue alignment, going through a stone, 2 churches and Queen Charlton Church. The 12th century church of St Margaret, Queen Charlton. The third ley goes to Norton St Philip Church, Hinton Charterhouse Crossroads and Monkton Combe Church before skirting the theatre, going to the campus centre mound, then it skirts the hill fort and skirts Salisbury. The 13th century church at Norton St Philip with its 70-foot tower. Monkton Combe Church is 19th century, but twice rebuilt on the site of a church dating from 1757. The fourth lay goes through Claverton Church, the Claverton Centre, Englishcombe Church, an aligning road, an enclosure, an Aveline's Hole at Burrington, and a crossroads at Rowberrow. Church of St Mary the Virgin at Claverton has a Norman tower and contains a peal of 6 bells, including 3 dated 1637. Other parts of the church date from the 13th century. St Peter's Englishcombe was built in the 12th century. It was given to the Cluniac Priory of Bermondsey in 1112. It has Norman arches and leper holes in the porch. The village lies on the route of the Wansdyke. Aveline's Hole is a cave at Burrington Combe in the limestone of the Mendip Hills. It's the earliest scientifically dated cemetery in Britain, between 10,200 and 10,400 years old. Much of the collection has been lost, although more than 50 individuals were represented. There were only 2 complete skeletons. Perforated animal teeth, red ochre and 7 pieces of fossil ammonite suggest that some of the bodies were adorned. A series of inscribed crosses found on the wall of Aveline's Hole are believed to date from the early Mesolithic period, just after the Ice Age. The pattern is said to be comparable with others known from northern France, Germany and Denmark. A fifth lay goes through the Claverton Centre, skirts the Hill Fort, skirts Salisbury, goes through a crossroads and Yate Church and 2 ponds. So here at Bath we have a modern university campus with modern lookalikes of ancient sites, aligning on genuine leys with ancient marks. I was to find the trend even more marked the following year at the University of York. In 1979 I had the summer school for the Technology Foundation course of the Open University, which was at the University of York, a campus on low-lying ground in the former grounds of Heslington Hall, an Elizabethan mansion. It was a beautiful place of lakes and trees, overlooked by the low ridge on which the large tumulus called Seward's How. This was found to be part of a triangle of leys, with ancient as well as bizarre subconscious sighting implications. For my first ley hunt I went towards the tree-covered Seward's How, now adjoining a waterworks, and found a beautiful view from the ridge. York Minster was visible in the distance. There is a very interesting alignment from here to nearby Heslington Church. This passes through 2 modern but suggestive places, one a small fir-covered mound in a college courtyard, the other an immense mushroom-shaped water tower serving the university. From Seward's How, the mushroom tower and church spire can be seen in direct alignment. This can also be seen from the fir mound. This ley also goes through a city gate at Walmgate and possibly 3 churches in York. The Seward's How, Heslington Church and Walmgate ley. I also found there is a ley running along the hedge behind my room at Wentworth College. This is the city boundary. The line continues south to pass through a church at Salby and several track junctions, as well as Rickall Church. Rickall Church dates from the 12th and 15th centuries. I was later to find that the alignment also passes through 2 field gates at each end of the university. The third ley runs right across the campus from Heslington Church to Wentworth College. It's possibly the best ley of the 3, going through High Belthorpe Moat, across tracks, Primrose Hill Trig Point, an aligning stretch of the A1079, Heslington Church, Dringhouses Church and an aligning road at Haylaw. Heslington Church, although Victorian, is on the site of an 11th century church. The position of the University of Surrey is fairly similar to that of Bath, being on the side of a hill overlooking the ancient town of Guildford. There is, however, no known prehistoric site on this hill, despite its mysteriously suggestive name, Stag Hill. Instead, the campus is overshadowed by the only cathedral in England to have been built on an entirely new site, the impressive, if not entirely beautiful, Cathedral of the Holy Spirit. Cathedral and university grounds seem to merge into each other. There seem to be 3 leys that meet at a point on the campus to the northwest of the cathedral. One of these is particularly impressive and has been investigated by the Surrey Earth Mysteries group. It travels southwest, starting at St Mary's Church, Byfleet, a 13th century building with a timber tower, which is one of the most powerful lay points in the area. When I work near there, I use it at lunchtimes to perform a number of experiments with the sand jar and with quartz crystals. The sand jar. Pressure on the cork with one hand seemed to give a tingle in fingers of the other hand resting on the end of the pointed wires if one is at a powerful point. A drawing of the church from 100 years ago shows what appears to be a mound against the wall of the church. This has now disappeared, and there seems to be no further information on it except that it carried a flight of steps to a private gallery. But it's not necessary to build a mound to carry steps. Many churches have external staircases, such as Shepperton. Could a previously existing mound have been pressed into service? The alignment continues to Wisley Church through a mysterious stone in the porch there. Standing over the stone and viewing along the straight church path, Byfleet Church can be seen on the horizon in direct alignment, one of the best examples of visual alignment in Surrey. Wisley is a beautiful example of an almost entirely Norman church. Another line through the centre actually goes through the cathedral, which may thus be subconsciously sighted. The church doesn't seem to be very powerful in the nave, but there is one room where a strong atmosphere of peace, reminiscent of Glastonbury, can be felt. The alignment starts at the Church of St Martha on the Hill, a striking hilltop church on the Pilgrim's Way, and goes through a crossroads and another church before reaching the cathedral and the Stag Hill Centre. It continues to Wood Street and Normandy churches. The third, coming westward, goes through 2 cross tracks in the Lingfield area, a track junction just south of Lingfield Church, a cross tracks near Lee, Wotton Church, a tumulus at Newlands Corner, a beauty spot and viewport near Guildford, a cross tracks on Merrow Down, the Stag Hill Centre, and 2 churches in Aldershot. Once again we find a modern university built on a strikingly significant place, a commanding viewpoint where 3 leys cross, with connections with sighting of a great modern cathedral. The thought continues to impose itself upon us that leys are not just dead artefacts, but living lines that can use structures of all ages, however great or little the consciousness of this may be. In 1983 I visited the University of Sussex campus near Brighton and found it to be another very pleasantly laid out campus. There was no particular ancient site nearby, except perhaps for Falmer Church, but this was more than compensated for by an amazing case of subconscious sighting. This is the meeting house, whose upper story was the campus church, and the lower floor of which is made up of meeting rooms. It's a cylindrical building set in lovely landscaped grounds with a circular forecourt of radiating brickwork and a number of mini menhirs nearby. But its real glory becomes apparent when one goes inside the church. The windows are rectangular blocks of stained glass, all colours of the rainbow, sometimes one colour predominating, sometimes another, as one looks around the walls. The atmosphere was stunning, and there was considerable head hum felt. There are 2 quite good leys which meet on the forecourt, suggestively made in a radiating shape. Not the meeting house itself, though one of them passes through it. The first, coming eastward, passes through a crossroads with a short aligning stretch at Small Dole, the Devil's Dyke, a nearby tumulus, one of a group of 2, a cross tracks, the Meeting House forecourt and Falmer Church. Despite its position on the edge of Brighton, near two universities and a main road, Falmer retains much of the feel of a downland village it once was, with church and cottages grouped round a pond. Domesday Book records a church, though the church is 12th century. The second lay, coming southwards, goes through a church at Burgess Hill, a crossroads, Ditchling Church, which is a high point with Scots pines and a stone set in the well, Ditchling Beacon, the Meeting House forecourt, a straight edge of a wood just south of the university, a crossroads at Upper Bevendene, a church at Woodingdean, about 1.5 miles of following road at Rottingdean, and a crossroads. This lay contains 9, 10 or 11 acceptable points, depending on your strictness, and it's a really excellent one, including some very significant sites. That this goes through the Meeting House and its forecourt certainly seems to be good evidence for the subconscious sighting theory. St Margaret's Church, Ditchling, was founded in the 11th century. The fabric of the flint and sandstone building is mainly 13th century, though the nave is original. Ditchling Beacon is the third highest point on the South Downs, behind Butser Hill and Crown Teglise. It consists of a large chalk hill with a steep northern face. It's the site of an early Iron Age fort with a single defensive bank and ditch. I was at the university attending an annual meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. There was an archaeological and historical trip entitled Three Sussex Villages. These were Alfriston, Berwick and Alciston, and all gave indications that further lay study of the area might prove fruitful. All three churches are built on high ground, and the church history of Berwick suggests that they may all be built on the sites of barrows. Berwick is 12th century on an earlier site, and has a mound in the churchyard thought to be a tumulus. Alciston has a long straight path leading to it. The village is ancient, with a tithe barn with an ancient timber roof, as well as a manor house with a 13th century roof. There is also an ancient looking stone just in the village. In 1985 I visited Walton Hall, the campus of the Open University near Milton Keynes. One can imagine my delight, though perhaps not surprise, to find that this compact little campus, it's naturally smaller than most since most of its students are elsewhere, has an oak clump at its centre and a 14th century church, St Michael's, on its perimeter. The campus consists of modern buildings in the grounds of an old house, Walton Hall, which still remains. Many attractive features of the ground have not been altered, including the clump, the copse, a mulberry lawn and a walled garden. Several huge old cedars remain too, and a pond just opposite the church. There seem to be two leys crossing the campus, which cross at St Michael's Church. One coming south, going through a large cross tracks, Castle Farm, Lavenden, which seems to have some earthworks marked on the map, Lavenden Church, a crossroads tracks, the M1 intersection, coincidence or subconscious sighting, St Michael's and another church a little south of it. The other coming southwards at a slightly different angle goes through a cross tracks at Little Crawley, another north of Malslow, and Malslow Church and the copse, St Michael's and another church a little farther south. St Michael's Church and the pond. A former parish church, now the University Church and recital room. Castle Farm, Lavenden, on one of these leys, is a Grade 2 listed building that's adjacent to the remains of a modern Bailey castle, a scheduled ancient monument. A public footpath strikes off from the stile and finger post shown in the left of the picture and crosses the field in front of the farmhouse. Lavenden Church, on the same lay, has Anglo-Saxon origins and was later restored in the 19th century, including the addition of a tower in 1828 or 9. The name of the village of Malzo is an Old English language word which means Mull's Hill Spur. In the Domesday Book of 1086, the village was recorded as Moleshow. The church is of stone and dates from the 12th century, although most of it is 14th century, and it was restored in the 19th century. What conclusions can we draw from these things? What we have here are 5 university campuses, 4 of which are overtly linked with ancient places. Bath with a hill fort, York with a tumulus and ancient church site, Surrey with a hill with a suggestive name, and Walton Hall with a clump and ancient church. Sussex, to make up for its lack of an ancient site in its immediate vicinity, has particularly good leys, and Falmer Church, with its attractive setting, is not far away. All these campuses have buildings or structures that seem to be subconsciously sited. There is too much for us to believe it's either coincidence or knowledgeable sighting. York has its amazing tumulus mound tower church lay. Sussex has its perhaps even more startling meeting house, and Walton Hall has the siting of the campus itself round an oak clump. Surrey has its modern cathedral. Joining the ancient and the modern are the leys. Sussex has the best ones, linking the modern, powerful meeting house with such places as Ditchling Beacon, Ditchling Church with stone, and several tumuli and other churches. So really this study is about subconscious sighting. But still, we can only speculate as to the origin of these unconscious impulses. Despite my belief in extraterrestrials, I do not believe they are involved in this. It's too widespread a phenomenon even for their resources. My own idea, and it seems to have acquired a wider following in recent years, is that the Earth is an intelligent entity, delicately and finely balanced as the laws of quantum physics indicate the universe itself to be. The power of the leys in the Earth itself could be tangibly and inextricably linked with the life force of each living organism. But even if this is so, and there could be many other possible explanations, the question remains as to why universities. It can be seen why churches and places of worship should be subconsciously sited. The nature of thinking involved in prayer, as well as possibly the sound involved in church music, could be beneficial to the system. In fact, there is an interesting confirmation of my theory that the sound of running water and church music aid the system in the subconscious sighting of the church centre at Sussex and the 2 water towers and the church on the same lay in York. But why are modern universities so bound up in the system? Perhaps it's a question of nurturing the best young brains. This is a question that this study can only raise and not answer.